Science, James Brent, and I'd like to thank you all for joining us here tonight for the 2024 Don Edwards Lecture. We're so happy to have you with us. The Don Edwards Lecture series was named after and launched and initially endowed by longtime member of Congress from the Bay Area and friend of the Political Science Department, Don Edwards. Don Edwards was known as the Congressman from the Constitution for his dogged support of civil liberties and civil rights. And he was also an early environmental leader, and in fact, just north of us, you can find the Don Edwards San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge, named after him for his environmental efforts. I'd like to take this opportunity, Don is not with us tonight because he has passed, but I would like to take this opportunity to extend a very special recognition to members of the Edwards family. Judge Len Edwards and his wife, Margie Becker Edwards, who are in attendance tonight. We're also very, very honored to have with us tonight SJSU President Cynthia Teniente Mattson. She's here. Where is she, President? She's probably still shaking. Oh, okay, she's backstage. So I am so excited about tonight's speaker. I'm not going to be introducing her, but I just have to say how excited I am. I've been in the department for 30 years, and she's been associated with the department for longer than I have. She was a student in the department. She's been a teacher in the department. She's gone on as a graduate to incredible success. I think she's tonight going to be a real inspirational story for our students as what you can achieve with a degree from San Jose State and, of course, a lot of innate talent. So we're sorry that she's going to be leaving the Bay Area, but we're really, really happy to have an opportunity to hear from her tonight and to honor her in this way. She's got a lot of friends in the audience, and we're thrilled that she's here. If you are in a class including my own, and your professor has asked you to sign in for the event, there are sign-up sheets outside on the tables right where you came in, and you can just sign there, and they'll make sure that your professors know about it. So, with no further ado, I'd now like to introduce the Dean of the SJSU College of Social Sciences, Dr. Anne Marie Todd.
One of the really great things about being dean is that you get the opportunity to brag about departments. And so I'm thrilled to be here with so many distinguished alumni and guests of the Political Science Department. For 62 years, longer than Dr. Brent has been here, the Political Science Department has educated leaders at all levels of government with a special focus on Silicon Valley and the Bay Area. And as you'll hear, the Don Edwards Lecture signifies the civic engagement and community leadership that is the hallmark of the Political Science Department's legacy. Its students, faculty, and alumni continue to shape the future of this valley, the Bay Area, California, and the nation. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the leadership of Dr. Garrick Percival, who as chair has continued this legacy and ensured that the Poli-Sci Department thrives amid a pandemic, fluctuating enrollments, and budgets. Through it all, Poli-Sci is the bedrock of a strong, vibrant community that continues to engage the community and influence our world in public affairs. Dr. Percival, sorry. And it is now my pleasure to introduce San Jose State's leader who epitomizes civic engagement, President Dr. Cynthia Teniente Mattson. Some of you have heard me say this before, but I have been at San Jose State since 2002. I have seen 10 presidents in 22 years. And so I speak with experience when I say San Jose State has never been more engaged with our community or is driven to move our city and region forward. And this comment is echoed by community leaders that I meet with regularly. Well, I don't necessarily meet with them regularly, but when I do meet with them, they regularly talk about the way that San Jose State has been, in the words of one of them, San Jose State has been reintroduced to the region and to the world. Dr. Teniente Mattson, in just 2 short years, you have made a profound difference in how the world sees SJSU, and perhaps more importantly, in how we see ourselves. And you lead with such joy. So thank you for your leadership. It is my pleasure to introduce President Cynthia Teniente Mattson.
Dean Todd, thank you so much for those kind remarks. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. It is a great night to be a Spartan, don't you think? So, Sarah, I'm alumni in the house. I am honored to add my welcome to the annual Don Edwards Lecture, as well as others that you've heard from. We're gathered here tonight in the spirit of Congressmember Edwards, whose legacy as a champion of civil liberties, social justice, and environmental protection continues to inspire us all. And we need that inspiration right about now in these very controversial times as we get very close to Election Day. The values Don Edwards upheld are deeply woven into the fabric of our university. Through our commitment and our values to being visionary and community-minded, and our dedication of all of our community to educating students who are prepared to tackle the greatest issues of tomorrow in this very trying time. At San Jose State University, we have always strived to empower students to become leaders in advancing justice, equity, and innovation across all communities. And we're going to see a witness of that. We're going to bear witness to that this evening. This lecture series allows us to reflect on the importance of public service and the power of leadership. Leadership in shaping a more equitable and inclusive society. It's fitting that tonight we're joined by one of our region's most dedicated public servants, Santa Clara County Supervisor Cindy Chavez. She's one of the first individuals I'd met. People that I worked with in San Antonio knew her. And before I came, told me, you must immediately seek out Supervisor Chavez. Fortunately, she sought me out, and I am certainly going to miss her. But let me tell you a little bit about what you already know, but it's worth repeating, that Cindy's career in public service spans decades, during which she has been a tireless advocate for the people of Santa Clara County. Whether it's been as a member of the San Jose City Council or in her current role representing District 2 on the Board of Supervisors, she has consistently worked to address some of our community's most pressing challenges. Let me give you a few. From mobilizing efforts to save the Regional Medical Center's trauma unit to crafting the $950 million affordable housing bond in 2016, her leadership has created lasting change. Her commitment to justice extends to addressing gender-based violence, where she has championed a 400% increase in funding for survivors of sexual assault and human trafficking. Cindy has been a driving force behind the revitalization of the Santa Clara County Fairgrounds, something that is dear to her heart, I know. We've talked about this many times. And she has led many vital public awareness campaigns on issues like fentanyl and public health. She is an enormously proud graduate, and we are enormously proud of her, of San Jose State University. Her deep connection to our community makes her an inspiring leader and a role model for many, and she will continue to be a role model from afar. Her recent appointment as County Manager of Bernalillo County in New Mexico is a testament to her commitment to public service and the far-reaching impact of her leadership. It is with great pleasure and distinction that I introduce Supervisor Cindy Chavez. Please join me in welcoming her to the stage this evening.
Thank you. Well, I am so excited to be here today, and I have to say I was a little envious when Ken got to do it first. But he is Dr. Yeager, after all, and a member of the San Jose State University family. I first wanted to say a very big thank you to President Daniete Matson, and I heard Anne Marie's comments about her, and she really is a remarkable leader. I've been here a long time, and I can testify to the kind of energy and vivaciousness she brings. I will just tell one story about her. I met her on her first day of work, which was a day of service when we were celebrating Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And the reason I knew who she was is she was covered in head to toe with San Jose State colors. And she said, "Oh, today's my first day." And I thought, what a great way to start changing the world on a day of service, representing San Jose State so beautifully. So thank you, Cynthia. I also just wanted to acknowledge the really amazing professors that San Jose State has. And so, there are a couple of them I wanted to talk about. Let me see where Dr. McCrae is. I don't know where he is. But I want to give him a round of applause because he has done a brilliant job of helping young people who come to San Jose State understand the importance of empathy in changing the world. Just brilliantly, and done it with the kind of lack of, you're not judgmental. And I will tell you, when I was in your class, I was very judgy, but you helped me quite a lot understand the importance of being open and really hearing other people and understanding that if you wanted to have a peaceful world, you were going to have to do that in collaboration with others. So thank you. I also just wanted to acknowledge Dr. Terry Christensen. And I don't know where Terry is. Oh, there you are. And let me just say a couple things about Terry and about the political science department and the culture of it that you all have kept going. And that is that Terry did a fantastic job of helping young people find their place in the world of making change. And I want to thank him for the internships, the opportunities, the advice, the kindness, the sternness, the directness, and the love. And just what a fantastic, fantastic role model you are for so many of us. Now, I think there are so many friends here that I could speak a little bit about, but I do want to say, I know Judge Edwards is here, and I was saying that when I first met Congressmember Don Edwards, that I was so excited to meet him that I forgot my name. It's true, and everybody was lined up to meet him, and the worst thing is I wasn't even first. Like, if you were first, you could understand being a little tongue-tied, but I was like fourth in line, and everybody was like, I'm Joey, and I'm a junior at blah, blah, blah. And I was like, hi. It was awful. It was awful. But what made me feel a little bit better is one of his staff took pity on me and made sure that I got a chance to be a delegate for him at the California Convention, which was such an honor. And then I remembered my name. So I wanted to just take a couple minutes to talk a little bit about why local government matters. And it is going to seem obvious to all of you, but I want us to think about it in the context of the very tumultuous world we live in today. And as you know, we probably haven't had in human history a lower level of confidence in institutions in any time. Not in education, not in the press, not in faith institutions, not in government. And as you think about that, and you think about what we're facing in the world, what it helps us understand is that one of the only ways that we build and rebuild vibrant democracies is doing that in a way that every person who's part of this community sees themselves and their values reflected in their local governments and sees change in a way that is real and meaningful for them. I think about people like Senator Jim Bell, who's here, and recognize that as a young person, he got activated from his experience at San Jose State by Congressmember Norm Mineta, who was then probably a council member or maybe mayor. And that ability to know your local elected official, to be engaged by that person, and to start to do work in the world is just one of many, many ways that we have the opportunity to deeply connect to our communities. So I'm going to start by saying why local government matters from the perspective of people in this room, and then how I think that can transform city by city, county by county, how people engage in the world. And I'm going to use COVID, and I know it's kind of an overused thing, but I just want to say how important and life-saving local government is. Before COVID hit, St. Louis and O'Connor hospitals were being sold by the Daughters of Charity. And we tried to buy them because a hedge fund was buying them, and we knew what would happen if the hedge fund bought them, And it's exactly what did happen. They stripped them down. In fact, when we bought O'Connor Hospital, one of the first things we had to do was replace the lights in the operating room. Now, we bought those hospitals in 2018, and I want to thank Dr. Yeager because Ken played a leadership role in that as well. But we bought those hospitals, and I want you to imagine Santa Clara County going through COVID-19 with 2 less emergency rooms and 400 less hospital beds. Many, many more people would have suffered and died. Now, fast forward to COVID. The other thing I wanted to just mention about when we got into COVID, one of the first things that happened, as you know, is we started to get, closures that were happening very rapidly. We had a lot of fear in our community. And really, outside of Dr. Fauci, a lot of the information that was coming at a national level was confusing, scary, and dramatically unhelpful. Maybe that's an understatement. What were we able to do here? Because we had local relationships, the city of San Jose, the county of Santa Clara, the leadership group, our labor movement partners, and our nonprofit partners were able to respond like that. As soon as testing became available, it took us less than 36 hours to open up the fairgrounds for testing. Less than 36 hours. When we were having trouble buying and being able to buy all of the equipment that we needed, we reached out to our friends at the leadership group, and literally we had institutions saying, I've got an airplane in Europe. I've got we're buying gloves from another place. And so we were able to save lives because the rich and meaningful relationships and connections we had to each other, even though we didn't all agree politically on almost anything. But we knew each other. We trusted each other. We knew that even though we didn't see every issue the same way, we did believe in our communities and love our communities enough to extend ourselves to help each other. That is what local government can do. And we demonstrated during that time that we could do it brilliantly. Here's the other thing it can do. It can change the trajectory of national politics. This city and this county were the first city and county in the nation to offer every child under the age of 18 access to health insurance no matter where they were born. That is national policy now. That happened here first. Ken caused a big fur fight. Thank you. Ken started a big fight nationally because he did what? He told McDonald's they couldn't sell toys to make kids chubby. Right? And what happened with that? First of all, the county had one restaurant that impacted. We try not to tell people that. Because what happened was it became a national trend to have a debate and a discussion about health and what we were doing to kids' health and what restaurants could do to be partners. Ken leveraged that small opportunity into a national change for the health of children. Brilliantly done. The county of Santa Clara was the first county who owned municipal airports to not allow selling leaded fuel anymore. So we don't sell leaded fuel at Reed Hillview or San Martin. And by the way, San Jose State was a huge help in that because San Jose State stood up and said, hey, our students are pilots. If you're flying for us, you're going to fly with unleaded fuel. That was very powerful. Now, the reason that's so important is it started a national debate that also allowed the EPA to have health findings around the impact of lead on children. And what we know here in our local community is that we had the level of lead that children had in Flint, Michigan, in children who live near that airport. 3 million children across the country who live near municipal airports. If we can get the federal government and the FAA, not easy to move, but if we can actually get them to change their policies to demand changes in that, and we do have a state law in California that in 2030, everybody can only sell unleaded fuel. What that means is that we are literally going to save the health and well-being of children across the country and increase their productivity, the ability to graduate from high school, to maintain their behavior, and to have a lifetime better of health than they would have had living next to that same airport. Local government matters. And deep and meaningful relationships with the community allow us to do things that are incredibly difficult to do. And even when they're controversial, if they make sense in a local area, it allows us to change the health, well-being, and trajectory of individual lives. So I have a ton of examples, but I'm going to just wrap up with two because I'm really excited to have a conversation with Sal. We, in this community, we have had opportunities to do incredible things. And I want to just talk a little bit about why not only were we able to accomplish those things, but I want to use some examples of the organizing that was done around them. We live in a community that is one of the most diverse in the country. And as you all know, 40% of all the people who live here are foreign born. And 50% of all households speak a language other than English at home. And as a matter of fact, much of maintaining our population or our population increases over the last 10 years have been focused on immigrants coming into this country. Now, as we look at the possibility of a new president, I just have to sit with that for a moment. But the impact to our local economy and how people feel about where they are is so critical. When President Trump was elected, we had a lot of people in our community that were very, very nervous about what that would mean for them. Women were focused on what would this mean for rape crisis centers and other things that we knew we needed funding for. The LGBT community was concerned. People who were new immigrants, whether they were documented or not, were concerned. People were panicking. What did we do? Here in this community, we held hearings. We let people come and yell at the county and tell us every single thing they were afraid of. And you know what we did with that? We increased the amount of money we now spend to support victims of sexual assault, domestic violence, and human trafficking by 400%. We did that here, right? And I think I told you, we test rape kits faster than any county in the country. We established an Office of Disability Affairs, an Office of Immigrant Affairs. We did all of that at a local level to help people feel safe, secure, and connected. So, local government matters, and the reason I use the term everything all at once is because there is no way to respond to only one issue. People expect government to be responsive to them. And in my opinion, what I learned from San Jose State, and it's one of the reasons I'm so grateful, and I know my husband Mike and I are both, so blessed to have been able to attend here, is what we learned is that policy, organizing, and community building are all a part of a healthy, dynamic community. And the political science department here exercises that over and over again by getting young people involved in their communities and demonstrating to them that they have the power to make change. I learned that here, and I'm really, really grateful for that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Chavez, for your insightful words. My name is Mary Curran Percival, and I'm an associate professor in the Department of Political Science. We'd now like to move to the second part of the event, a moderated discussion with Cindy Chavez and Sal Pizarro of the Mercury News. Let me briefly introduce Sal. Sal Pizarro has written the Around Town column for the San Jose Mercury News since 2005, covering a variety of people, events, and topics in Silicon Valley. A San Jose native, Sal studied journalism at San Jose State before transferring to UC Santa Barbara, where he received a political science degree in 1993. He was president of the Rotary Club of San Jose from 2022 to 2023, and is co-director of Mosaic Journalism, a program for high school journalists that includes a summer workshop at San Jose State. He lives in San Jose with his wife, Amy, and their children, Mia and Alex. Please welcome Sal Pizarro.
Have to get these microphones out of our way. Thank you very much for that introduction, and it's so nice to meet you. Supervisors Chavez and I have known each other for many, many years, and in fact, we could have carpooled here. We both live in Negley Park, right next door to each other.
That's true.
And instead, we parked next to each other. So before we get started, because we're gonna jump on a horse and we're gonna keep going. But before we get started, I don't know if this is working. Okay, Professor Brent has index cards for the audience. So if you have questions, we're gonna have an audience segment later. He'll give them to you. You'll hold them up. He'll collect them. Bring them to me.
Are there people I can tell you not to give them to?
I think they're all sitting in that row. Okay. It was wonderful to hear you talk about why local government matters and talk about your time at San Jose State, too. During your formative years, and that could be when you were here or your early years in public service, who were some of your political influences and heroes?
So, I want to be a little old-fashioned and say this because everybody says, oh, my mom and dad, but it really was my mom and dad. And my dad was a registered Republican. And for those of you who know me, you know that's why that's shocking. But I remember the first time I went to vote, and I got home, and my dad said, Mija, he said, what was it like? How did it feel? And you know how they have that list where you can look and see your name, you sign your name, and then it has everybody's name on it and what party they're in? And so I said, Daddy, you're a Republican. And I never knew that because he didn't talk about party at all. He talked about people. And actually that was a really big life lesson for me, that he thought about how people performed and not what party they were in. And then he said to me, he's like, I think that's private information. I said, well, apparently it's not. Like, I'm not the only one. Our neighbors were there. People saw it, Dad. Like, I was like really pretty freaked out about it. But anyway, my mom and dad. And the reason is my parents, they came from New Mexico. They were really active in our church, and they were very faithful people, very Catholic. And their feeling was that if you received anything, that you had an obligation to share that with others. And so what that meant is we had people living with us who my dad met on a job site, or we had a family friend who passed away, and so their children came and stayed with us till their dad got a little more stable. And I always thought every family was like that. I had no idea that was Carmen and Ray Chavez's way to give back to the world. But that's how I learned that we had to be part of solutions in real.
What great examples they were. Now, of course, you've had a long career, and you've had so much contact with so many other people in the political sphere. Is there anyone that you have reassessed over the years, let's say, who perhaps you were not as enamored with early on, but you've since said, oh, wait, that person actually, I hold them in higher esteem than I originally thought?
Well, there's this guy named Sal Pizarro.
No, not fair.
Actually, it's a really fair question, and I have lots of examples of people who maybe I didn't think I would get along with them politically, and in some instances had pretty big battles with, that we ended up working really closely together. And because he's not here, I'll talk about it a little bit. One was the DA, Jeff Rosen.
Okay.
So, and I'll skip kind of to the end because the beginning's fascinating and funny, but probably not PG in a way. But what happened is that when I very first got into office, the district attorney wanted to be able to detain people who were undocumented, even if they weren't, even if we weren't charging them. And his point was, we have a violent crime problem. We need a second bite at the apple. We wanted to be able to detain people. And myself and members of the board did not think that was constitutional, that you can't just detain people. That's kind of a primary thing. And so anyway, we got into a big battle over it. It was a big ruckus. And then we had a number of other run-ins. But here's what ended up happening. And this is part of one of the things I love about getting older. There were some things I don't love about it. But one thing I really love about it is when you live long enough, you know how often you're wrong about people when you first meet them, right? And so what ended up happening is that part of the reason we were able to test rape kits faster than any place in the country is a community member came up to me and said, do we have a backlog? I didn't know. I went to Jeff. I said, do we have a backlog? Jeff said, a little one, we'll take care of it. But then, we were looking at national standards, and I went to him and I said, hey, Jeff, what if we tested rape kits faster than anybody in the country? And he said, well, why don't we do that? And we now not only do that, but we also have a gun collection procedure that we do for people who are high risk who have firearms, based on trust, a good relationship, and the ability to work together. The Child Advocacy Center, we have one of the finest advocacy centers in the country, and if you're a victim of abuse as a child, you will get one interview in that location, and you will get services from nonprofits, from the public safety, and from the schools. And that was a collaboration between me and Jeff. And so what I would say that I've learned is that over and over again, I've learned the lesson that the more you get to know people, the more you appreciate them, and the more good that comes out of that relationship. Now, there are a handful of people in the world that doesn't work with, but it's a really small group of people. And sometimes when you think about politics, it feels like it's a really big group of people. It really isn't. Because if people have good character and good values, you can do good work with them.
And that's a really good sentiment, yes. And you talked a little bit about, being in the sort of the public service for a long time and evolving during that. You're one of actually several people, there's some of them in the audience right now, who served both on the San Jose City Council and the Board of Supervisors. And for people who haven't been through that process like myself, they might think being in elective office is the same, no matter what the office is. But having talked to you and other people, those are very distinct jobs. And could you tell our audience a little bit, like, what the differences are and if one is more challenging than the other and why?
Ken, I heard Ken giggling, and maybe Jim shaking his head. So first of all, what cities do are parks, fire, police, land use are the main things that they do. What counties do are health, welfare, the public safety and justice system, social services, public health. Just like the number is pretty dramatic. The county's budget is probably a little over 2.5 times the city's budget, and we're responsible for very different levels of activity. What I would say, and part of the reason I really wanted to be mayor of San Jose, is that I thought it would be so great to get the county and the city working together on very complex issues, particularly around housing and homelessness and public safety and mental health. But at the city level, and this is one of the challenges with being at the city level, people think you are responsible for everything. If you're a council member or vice mayor or any of that, they're like, oh, hi. And in fact, for years, people would say, where's my dog park? Why isn't that light working? I'd be like, oh, that's Raul Perales you want to call. Because the issues that people deal with at a city level are so much more present to them. So the bigger difference, I would say, is that you have an opportunity to work with neighborhood associations at a much higher level at the city level. And I actually miss that at the county, unless you're working on land use or transportation, which I have worked a lot on transportation.
Oh, yeah, we're going to get to that. You mentioned it, that you wanted to be mayor of San Jose. You ran twice, once in 2006, losing to Chuck Reed.
I was going to say, and salt. Do you have salt for my wounds? No, I'm just kidding. Yes.
I was going to ask you to say something nice about Chuck Reed, but maybe we'll get to that. And then in 2022 to Matt Mahan. I've been told that failure is instructive, and I'm not sure I believe that. But you lost that office, especially in 2022, really close race with Mayor Mahan. How did you deal with that setback, and did you learn something from it, and what?
Well, when I ran in 2005, I was actually telling some students this earlier. When I ran in 2005, that time it felt hot, like it does now. And what I mean by that is that I got a lot of racism came my way, a lot of sexism. And I'll just give one example. So we were at the Mercury News, and and we were answering questions in real time for a lunchtime query from the people who read the Merc. And the questions I got were, why would you run who's going to take care of your child? Now, what's interesting is I was running against 3 men who all had children close to Brennan's age, my son's age, but I was the only one that got that question. And actually, I was with Scott Harehold, and he was like, I don't think that question had come up before. And I was just thinking about it because I saw you there. But like, and then people asked me, like, you know, how good a role model could you be? You're overweight, you know. And again, I you know, like, and when you're young, let me just say this. When I was in my teens, I could not have imagined being in a world where people would be judging me for my weight or whether or not I was married or how many kids. Like, you know, you're so sensitive when you're growing up. And something happened to me along the way where I was like, yikes. Like, hopefully by doing a good job and being out in the community, I would persuade people that you could be a Latina, you could be, you know, you could be you could come from a public school at like San Jose State and not Yale or Princeton and still serve the public with dignity, respect, and by the way, be accomplished and do a good job. So I thought the world was further ahead, and I didn't realize that it wasn't. And what I learned from that, honestly, was that you have a choice. You have one choice is you curl up and you do something that's less controversial and you heal your wounds. The other is you lean back in. And one of the things I learned, and my father had passed away already, but one of the things I learned from my father is you're going to fall down a lot. It's always, always about how you get up. And, you know, and I went back into the labor movement, and I wasn't ready to run for office again. I'll tell you, the Board of Supervisors seat was open, and I knew that I wasn't, I knew that I was too hurt to serve. Like, I realized that I couldn't be out in the world for a bit, like as much as I was. I mean, being the head of the Labor Council is no small thing. But I knew that I needed time because I thought I would be too bitter if I jumped right back into it. Now, you know, the other thing I learned, you know, what running against Mayor Mahan is that the world, our world here, in this place, we have done ourselves such a disservice by drawing these broad, hard distinctions between being a labor leader and a public servant or being in the business community. And we have groups that spend lots of money reinforcing these very limited ways of thinking about people. And the truth of the matter is that, you know, I have enjoyed working with Matt. We've worked really hard together on a number of issues. I talked to him last night our phone call ended at 9:30, and he was my first call this morning at 8. So, you know, like my job, he's the mayor of San Jose. My job is to help him be successful, especially, I mean, almost entirely when we agree on things, because again, good character, good values, then I support and issues and ideas that we support, but we're gonna have conflict over issues too. But one of the things I really learned is that the bar is so much higher for women. And I was struck by the idea that you could have somebody young and male, and that equated to young and accomplished, right? Like what we did here with COVID, and I'll just say this, like what I have accomplished as an elected official is quite a lot. And it's hard for women to learn how to say, I am very good at my job. But for the public, it was like, you know, yes, you're good. But I literally had a voter and by the way, in our neighborhood say this to me, you know what, you have accomplished so much, and I thought I was going to be supporting you, but he is so charming. And I'm not kidding you. Like that was, and somebody we know, that was like, you know, and the city could really use some youthfulness. And so anyway, so I would just say that, that I think we have a long way to go, and also that people who don't want to see progressive leaders know that the way you keep good women out is you call them corrupt. And you're seeing it in this election cycle right now. All these really great young, and they're not all just young, but these really brilliant candidates that are progressive leaders, they're being called corrupt. Why? Because we tolerate corruption in men. We do not tolerate it in women, and they know that. And so, anyway, we have a long way to go. But I would still tell people I would have done it again. I would have done it better, but I would have done it again. And it should be hard to be able to serve.
Well, isn't it just funny in a terrible way that, you're running against Matt Mahan and people are saying, oh, well, you're too accomplished. We want somebody younger. But 18 years earlier or 16 years earlier, you're running against somebody, older. And they're like, no, you're not experienced enough for what we want. So there's something there. I think you're right. And we are seeing it play out on the stage nationally and certainly, in a lot of ways. So looking back, getting into our time machine, what do you wish that someone had told you at the start of your career about serving, especially an elected office? Because there's so many different ways to serve in public service. But elected office is distinct, and you talked about some of these challenges of being a woman, being a Latina. Is there something that, boy, I wasn't prepared for this?
I know there are young people here in the audience, and one thing I would tell you is that when I very first ran for office, and Mike, you'll remember this because I think Muffy was one of the people who came over to our house, but she saw me and she says, oh, you've got to wear blazers, and you need you never go someplace without a necklace. I mean, she gave me like a whole list of things, and a lot of people did. Yeah, and made me cut my hair and like all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that I love that I'm seeing with this new generation of leaders is the willingness to just be authentically who you are and not be afraid of that. I would just say lean into it. You're not going to be for everybody, no matter how much you try to please people. And I will tell you, it made me less confident because I was trying to remember and be too many things to just be who I am, which is, some people are going to like you, some people aren't, but I just wish that people would have been okay with us being who we are today. And I'm just so blown away by this younger crop of leaders and just revel with joy when I see them wearing shoes that I can't ever imagine that I would have been able to walk in at any point in time in my life, and feeling confident, owning the room. And I say own it, because it's going to come at you one way or another.
That's certainly true. You talked a bit about some of your accomplishments. You've had a very accomplished career at many levels, but you are leaving public service in this area, at least, in just a couple of weeks. What's left on your to-do list that you haven't finished, that you're kind of like, I wish I'd gotten that done?
Honestly, there are a lot of things. I have many to-do lists, as Mike can tell you. I'm not a person who chooses one thing. I really, people say, oh, if you want to accomplish things in politics, choose one thing, choose two things. And my experience has been choose them all. Work really hard, make them happen. That's how I look at the world. So, do I wish BART was built all the way through downtown San Jose? Absolutely. There are some things like that. I wish we spent more money than what we're spending now to protect victims of domestic violence, human trafficking, and sexual assault. There are a lot of those things that I would say I would still want to make sure to do. But the one thing, and this is part of the reason I'm taking the job in Bernalillo County, is that my whole career has been pushing organizations to do things they don't want to do, right? And anybody who works for any city agency or county knows, VTA, all of them, that they say that's hard, that's complicated, and I say, I know. It's going to be awesome. We're going to get it done. So now I'm going to have the opportunity to be on the other side and to better understand what inhibits organizations from being client-centered, universal in their design, and responsive to constituents. And I really want to better understand that, because what I'm hoping is that it will give me the experience to educate a whole new crop, both of administrators, but also people who run for office, on how to make government, especially at a local level, much more effective in meeting the needs of the community it's intended to serve.
So you're going to make a lot of friends over there in New Mexico now. Okay. Yeah, I should ask you, who's going to be happiest that you're going? But
oh, goodness. That's a list. I see Jonathan going, I can give that list to you later. I will say that I spoke at Rotary, and this was quite a while ago, and they give you a little review of how you did as a way of training you. You know, like, oh, this you spoke clearly or whatever. But the highest compliment I ever got was, you're damn effective. I wish you weren't on the other side.
Well, okay.
I thought, oh, I'll take that.
So we're going to be moving into audience questions in a couple of minutes, but I do want to ask, during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially, you were the target of a lot of protests.
I'm sorry, some of them were at your house too.
Including some of them right outside my house. And you have participated in protests as a member of, as an elected official, as just an involved community member. And there's so many protests going on right now over a number of issues. Where do you stand on protests? Is there a line that you now, as a government official, see where, is it just open season, or is there a line where protesters shouldn't cross?
That is a really great question. So
And I'm asking it at a university for a reason.
Well, let me just say what I have learned about protests. I was actually a pretty young person and in San Francisco at a protest, and this woman was walking by us and said, there's a more civilized way to make change. And I was thinking about it as she walked away, and I'm with a bunch of housekeepers. We're protesting in front of a hotel because they wanted like a 50-cent an hour raise, and I can't even tell you how little they were making. It was it was so small. And I thought, you know what, for a person who has money and connections, you pick up the phone, you call the mayor of your city. For that housekeeper, she doesn't have the mayor's cell phone. She doesn't know where he lives. She doesn't know him. So how does she get her voice heard? And so from my perspective, it's a really it's an intellectually dishonest thing to say to somebody, do it the civilized way, because the civilized way requires me to have $1 million and the ability to come to one of your events. So I think that's a really not righteous. I also think that we live at in a time where we do have to be mindful of public safety. And I think, and I've been in a lot of protests where I felt like people's safety might be at risk, and I made changes as the leader of those protests. As a matter of fact, someone gave me a picture as I'm leaving of me and Jesse Jackson, because we were in a protest in downtown San Jose, and Jesse Jackson says, I think we should take arrests on this street, and we were on East Santa Clara Street. And I said, well, no. We had a bunch of people who were with us that were undocumented, a bunch of moms, and none of them had gotten trained or prepped for a protest. And he said, you just don't really understand how to do this. So anyway, the picture is of us. It doesn't look like we're arguing anymore, so I kind of think it happened before. Like, I think the picture was before this fight. But one of the things I was telling him was that if we get arrested on this street, the highway patrol can respond, and we will have no way of protecting the people that are with us. And those are calls we make all the time as leaders. And I won that fight with Jesse Jackson.
One of the few people to win an argument with Jesse Jackson.
But I will say, but my interest was in their safety and in their security. And I think that we do have to think very carefully about that, because it's really important. And it's the same as people busting windows and stuff, because, I saw some of the protests, and a lot of the people that get impacted are small business people who actually agree with the protesters. So I do think we all have to be really mindful and thoughtful to who's the target audience, what are we trying to convey, and how do we do that in a way that demonstrates strength and respect at the same time.
That's a good point. We've also seen, though, an increase, I think, in recent years at public meetings, Board of Supervisors meeting, council meetings, a lot of angry people shouting over various issues. And I got to imagine that's a little scary as a elected official sitting on the dais wondering, am I going to get something thrown at me or worse here? Have you seen that change over the years where it's getting angrier, the protesting?
Yes, and when I ran for mayor in 2004, I had two men in the lobby of the KQED building grab me and shake me to get my attention. And I had another person, I was in a parade and I was in Almaden Valley, and this guy walked up with one of those water soakers, and the chief of police passed, the fire chief passed, and when I came, he got right in my face and doused me with water. And it was meant to be violent. It was meant to be intimidating. And so, we do live at a time when people are edgy and they're angry, and even many people, even in this room, maybe didn't feel this way, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The world's really at an inflection point. And so do I worry about it? I actually was more worried about my husband and my son, because, I'm a little more prepared for that because of what I do, but I was more worried about Brennan and Mike, and Brennan was little at that time. So we had to stop taking Brennan to things because, I couldn't be worried about him and myself. And occasionally, I have had to have security. I try not to do that. And I'll say the other thing, in that mayor's race, I was the only person who needed security. The guys didn't get threats, just me.
Okay, we've got a lot of audience questions here, so we're going to move on to those.
Okay.
I'm going to start, so I can sort through some of them. I'm going to start with one where I can sit here and be the punching bag. Did the media treat you fairly during your career? Go.
No.
Please elaborate.
Well, I mean, I think, I think that in particular, the Mercury in particular really bought into this labor business thing. And so what was hard about that is that what it meant was that if you were on one side or the other, you brought value to government or you didn't. And that really didn't reflect the accomplishments or changes or improvements that were being made in the community. And I worry about that. Like, first of all, I worry about us not having as strong a press as we did, to be honest with you. Like, I remember being at the Merc where you walked in and there were reporters as far as the eye could see, and then having the Merc in an office building with 5 desks. Like, that's terrifying to me. That said, I think we live in a time when you get paid by the click, which means that you're incentivized to write the worst thing in the worst way about people instead of being able to cover stories. And one of the things you do you have a great column that really does bring people together in our community. And I know for probably a lot of you choose media sources that you think are going to give you the best information and try not to be drawn to those clicks. But I believe that unfortunately the media has contributed to this community not rising to the level that it could, because it has created a safe space to demonize in ways that don't require us to think about our values, our principles, and the body of work that we're trying to accomplish. And I really do think that holds people back, and I think it's kept people from running for office that we would all want to run, right? They're brilliant, they're smart, they're engaging, and and the Merc actually wrote about my weight. Like, there was a speculation column in one of them that said, Cindy may be running for office because she's lost weight. And my first response was, hey, I lost weight. But the second was, what is wrong with people? Really. And the truth is, I probably didn't even lose. It was like one of those things that I thought was kind of just funny, but not funny, right? Because then everybody else says, why would I do that? We don't want people to run away that could be changing the world. That's awful.
No, we have that conversation all the time with potential, we, meaning me and people I know, not the media, where they say, I would not want to run for office because of this, and this. And certainly the way people are perceived in the media is one of those things. Moving on to a more complicated question, perhaps. As one of your duties as an elected official over the years, you've served on the VTA board. And the question we have is, as someone who loves public transportation, it's disheartening to hear that BART is headed towards bankruptcy. How do you think we can reprioritize and incentivize public transportation in our county, which is a very heavily car-dependent community?
Yeah, so first of all, whoever asked the question, thank you for that. Let me make a very big, broad observation about the way this country treats transit. In countries that have really strong public transportation systems, their GDP and the amount of money that comes from the state and federal levels of government in those communities directly contributes to public transportation the way it does for roads in those communities. So one of the biggest problems we have is if we want to get serious about creating the best green jobs in the country, which are transportation jobs, we want to address climate change, we want to be able to move goods and services, we want to stay the 5th largest economy in the country and be competitive, what that's going to require us to do at a federal and state level is deeply invest in public transportation. I also just want to acknowledge again Senator Bell, because one of the reasons we have money at all in public transportation is because of his leadership in terms of passing SB 1, I think is what it was. And so let's give him a round of applause for that amazing work. And then in our own community, we have to finish BART to San Jose. And the good news is the link to really embedding light rail on the east side of San Jose, again, I would thank Jim and others for this, is part of the work that's getting done now because we're actually investing in those systems. Every great community that has transit has multiple modes. And somehow here we're like, well, we're either going to have buses, light rail, or BART. No, or Caltrain. We're going to have it all, and it's going to connect. And that's what our goal has to be. And we have to keep pushing on the federal and state government to make those resources available.
So that's the big takeaway. Let's get those resources in, and we can then get the things done that we want.
Faster.
So that would be, of course, a huge change for us, and there's a lot of students in the audience who would like to make a real change. What is your advice to them? What's a good way to go about that?
Well, first of all, you have the best political science department of any university that I know of. So go talk to your professors about opportunities to engage in the community. And then the other thing I would say is that students you have so much power because every major movement in this country's history has in part been led by young people. And so there's no time where all of a sudden your date is like, oh, today is my day to be an activist. No, like your whole life you get to be able to be an activist. And so, one, I would absolutely talk to your professors. Two, find people that you can be really excited about. I see Patrick Ahrens here, who's a candidate for the assembly. And, you know, and I don't know if we have any other candidates because I left my glasses, as I always do, somewhere. But what I would say about that is finding people you believe in that you can learn from that will mentor you. And then the other thing is, and I've done this as recently as 15 years ago, finding people who will give you honest advice and help you think about how to do work. Find that mentor. And you're never actually too old to have somebody help you get better at what you do. And you can do that at any age. And then the last thing is, I'll say this, is people say, well, what should I be passionate about, or what should I do if I want to run for office someday? The thing I always tell people is find the thing you're most passionate about because it will lead you to a good path. If you just want to be in office, that's kind of boring. If you care about transportation, or you're really interested in animal rights, or you care about women's rights, then you're going to find, first of all, it's going to excite you. You're going to wake up with that fabulous obsession with whatever that thing is you want to change. And that obsession will drive you to do great things and then to find the best way to do it. And that may be running for office. It may be running a nonprofit. It may be being in the business world and creating something or innovating something that really makes our community better. But you have so many choices. I envy you. And the world's tougher for you now. The world's more complicated. But I'm so excited about all these young people I'm meeting. I'm confident that the world's going to be a better place because of all of you.
Well, I hope so, because we're getting old, and we need it to be better before we die.
That's exactly right.
But it is a complicated and difficult time we're in right now. All these young people are going into potential political careers at a time when the environment is so toxic, and you've lived through various cycles of cooperation and partisanship. What is your advice to them for how do we, reach across the aisle, as people say, whether it is Republican, Democrat, as we love to say in the media, labor business in San Jose? What can you do?
Well, let me remind everybody that if labor and business did not get along for real, like if it weren't just a political punchline, we would have saved less lives during COVID. Like, I can't emphasize that enough, that we did great things and we do great things in spite of not always getting along or agreeing. But the thing I would say that I think is most important is the thing I said earlier, which is deep and meaningful relationships change the way you think and the way you act. And so, as an example, I talked a little bit about Jeff Rosen, but I can think about a number of other people who I had to get to know them to understand where they were coming from. And one of them is Dr. Dewan, who was the CEO of the County Office of Education and was recently let go by the board for reasons that I can't understand. But I remember meeting her, and we were talking about foster youth, and I was a little bit taken aback by sort of her approach, and I thought, I'm going to need to get to know her better. The strides we've made in childcare, in education for foster youth, are so dramatic because she's amazing and because I had an opportunity to learn from her. And again, we didn't start out like warm and fuzzy because maybe our styles were a little different, our approaches were a little different. But by learning from her, by building a relationship, she is somebody I would trust with any child in this community. So I think you have to just be willing to be open and getting to know people. And it sounds really kind of basic and boring, but it's really the fruit of our labor comes from our ability to trust that we're working with somebody who's got the same common good ideas that we do for children or for the environment or for workers' rights or for health and safety. That really does fundamentally change the world. It does.
And let's hope it keeps changing it. What is a mistake that you made at some point in your career that still kind of has stuck with you and that you learned from, hopefully? But what is something that you're like, I wish I could go back and do that differently?
You mean like this week or in
I
general?
know. Well, is there one? It could be, I didn't, I wish I'd handled this issue differently, or I was definitely on the wrong side here and it needed to.
To be frank with you, all of you who do something you care about, and if you take risks, you are going to make mistakes. And I have made many. And I'm trying not to look at Mike because he's saying, I could think of 3 right now. But I will say, when I first got on the city council, and I will never forget this because it was such a haughty, inappropriate thing to do. But I remember this person came to me who was running for office, and they said, I'm running for office, and I would like your endorsement. And I said, well, I'm not endorsing you because you did the following 2 things. And one of them was something that my interpretation of this person, the way they handle the LGBTQ community. And so I remember going back, not to you, Ken, but I went to Wigsy, and I said, I just want you to know, I did not endorse this person, and I told them exactly why. And here and Wigsy looked at me, and Wigsy used to work here and has been a leader in Baymac and a number of other institutions, but she looked at me and she said, I met with him too, and I decided to support him because I saw that even though he'd made these mistakes, he made these huge strides to change his attitude, to change his approach, and to do better for students in our community. And she said to me, she's like, wouldn't it be a sad world if we didn't believe that people could change and grow? So my aha from that was that we all have to give each other enough grace to learn, to mature, to get better. The same grace, by the way, we would want other people to give us. And so I wish I hadn't been quite such a pill, but I'm not sure. But I'm sure that learning that lesson from Wigsy fundamentally changed how I think about all of my work.
Well, Wixie's a great teacher. She's taught me a few things.
Yes.
I'll tell you that. Okay, we are getting close to the end here, so you can, we're getting there. What do you hope your legacy during your time in San Jose ends up being? What do you hope people think about?
It's a really, really great question. And, you know, I know for a lot of us that we think about our work at different times in very different ways. But I've always wanted people to be proud that they voted for me. Like, I never let them down. I didn't do things that embarrassed them. And as a matter of fact, that I moved our agenda collectively of making this a great, vital, lovely place for people. You know, and I think that's part of growing up Catholic. You know, you can never get the Catholic out of you. But like, even though my father's passed, I think all the time about whether or not I would be making him proud, whether or not I would make my mom proud. And then when we had Brennan, our son, like, I think, am I leaving this place better for him and every other child in our community? And when I see Brennan, and I'll get emotional, you know, you can't help it when you're talking about your kids. But when I see him and I see opportunities for him to thrive, I think I want that opportunity for every kid. And as a matter of fact, when Mike and I were blessed enough to have Brennan, I remember getting crazy impatient with people who build parks, because I learned that, you know, children get their strength and learn how to write from playing on bars, from crawling, from all these different experiences you have at parks. And I remember seeing, we were building the park, Olinder Park, and I saw this pregnant woman with a stroller, and I was furious because they had just told me they were extending the park time for 6 months. And I'm like, that child will not be stretching their hands. They won't be, you know, because it gets personal. Like, you really understand it. And so really what I want is for people who invested in me to know that I invested deeply in them. And, you know, especially my parents and my son and my husband too. But Brennan, you know, you moms know this. The babies, we care so much about them.
Well, I feel as though our community has gotten a nice return on that investment in you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. That's really kind.
on Tuesday, hold for applause. On Tuesday, we've got an election coming up.
Yes.
You're not running for anything, but your
Ever.
successor, you're in New Mexico. You can't even get involved in politics, I don't think, but we'll get into that. But your successor will be chosen.
Yes.
I know you've got a preference.
Yes.
I've seen the lawn signs. But no matter who the voters elect, what is your advice for that person?
Well, let me
In
just
your job specifically.
Yeah, let me just say one thing about representing poor people. That even though we live in a really, really progressive place, no major initiative have I brought to the Board of Supervisors that I haven't needed to turn a lot of people out. Whether that's Reed Hillview Airport, really Reed Hillview I think a lot about, Regional Medical Center, the hospitals we were all kind of excited about, but a lot of initiatives, especially related to women. I don't know why that is, but I'll just say we still live in that world. And so one thing I would say is that the partnership with the community is so critical to making change for working people and poor people, that that really building the strength of the voice of the community is critical. Because if you go in and try to do it yourself, first of all, it's really disrespectful, because we are extensions of the community, period. But second, when you're trying to do hard things, and the community has to believe in it 100%, or you're not going to be able to get those things across the finish line. And almost every challenging thing that I've done, we've done it in partnership, deep partnership with people in the communities, grassroots leaders, grass tops leaders, so being deeply committed to the community. And then the other thing is, you know, I often say this, I don't have to worry about this for the people who are taking my seat, but a lot of people want to run for office because they think somehow there's some cosmic benefit in terms of the way people praise you or feel about you or care about you. And I just have to say the truth. When you're a candidate, people are super excited about you. When you're a politician, you're a politician. And if you and it's okay to get your feelings hurt, and it's okay to have emotion about this, but if you do it because you think you're going to get accolades from the community, I wouldn't do it. Like, I would just stand down, because, and it isn't that you don't, but people are angry. They're hurt. These are challenging times. They are looking for leaders that don't need care and feeding. And our job is to do the care and feeding. It's not to get the care and feeding. And sometimes people get confused with that. And the other thing, I don't know why people do this. I don't know why I'm talking about this right now. Mike's going to tell me I shouldn't have, but I'm going to. I don't understand why people run for office who are conflict averse. Because when you're on the dais, you get votes. You vote yes or you vote no. You can reshape the policy so it makes it easier to do, but all the time I get people who want to run for office because they want to bring people together. But guess what? People are going to be mad at you, and you have to vote yes or no. So anyway, if you know people want to run and they're conflict averse, give them therapy first and then get them in there.
All right. I want to, we're running out of time. I just want to finish this on a nice sort of lighter note, although it may make you cry. You're leaving us in about 2 weeks. What are you going to miss about San Jose and Santa Clara County? Not the political offices, but living here. What are you going to miss about this place?
Oh, you are going to make me cry. So first of all, so we're doing a party, and you're all invited. It's on, I'm not kidding, it's November 8th, and we're going to do it at Notre Dame High School at 5 o'clock. It's going to be so fun. And the intent is for me to be able to thank all of you, not the other way around. And I will cry, but I'm going to say 3 things that I'm going to miss a lot. I love the people here, truly. The painful people, the funny people, the happy people, the unhappy people, the people who choose to live, work, play, pray in this place are amazing. And the people I've met that, you know, they stand up for other people even though it's hard. They join their neighborhood association and do cleanups on Saturdays or start nonprofits and fight fentanyl and fight domestic violence. And, you know, we live in a place with amazing, amazing people. And that I'll miss. And I'll miss the, you know, the colors of this city when the sun is rising and setting. It's a magnificent place. And I was going to say I'd miss the food, but I'm kind of excited. So when I go to New Mexico, my mom's there. So I don't think I'll miss the food as much because my mom's going to be there to help cook. But I'm going to miss all of you.
And we're going to miss you right back. Thank you so much, Supervisor Chavez. Thank you, audience, for your questions. And I'm going to throw it back to Dr. Percival.
Thank you. You did a great job. You made me cry. You got me.
Can you hear me now? There we go. My name is Garrick Percival. I wanted to say our deepest gratitude for Cindy Chavez for joining us tonight. It was just a wonderful conversation. Learned a lot, as always, and we're really going to miss you. And you're really inspiration to all of us and to San Jose State. So thank you. And also to Sal Pizarro, who so gracious to come and to make this possible, and it was just a great conversation. So thank you, Sal. Before we go, I did want to extend my sincere gratitude to a number of people to make this event possible, including members of our Don Edwards organizing committee, but also especially to our staff colleagues, Christy Williams and Maria Moore, who are probably not in here, probably outside. Who just did amazing work to pull this together. Our political science faculty as well for promoting the event, and also to Dean Todd in the College of Social Sciences who are here tonight and is here tonight and also helped promote the event. President Cynthia Tenete Matson for joining us tonight. Thank you so much. Our students with SJSU votes who are out tabling, giving voting and election information outside. And also the Student Union theater staff for putting all of this together for us. It's just really great. Mics were awesome. Chairs, the whole setup, the whole bit. And then also, I just want to thank the Don Edwards family, the Edwards family, and our many generous donors who have make this lecture possible. And we're always looking for additional help to do Don Edwards lectures for years to come. And so if you'd like to contribute, we're very appreciative of that. And with that said, we'll conclude tonight's event. Thank you so much for coming. Good night. That's what we get.